Good evening to everyone who has joined this evening. We will begin soon. We are just waiting for some more attendees to join so we can start with the largest audience possible. Thank you.
Hi everyone, so I think we're ready to start, and with great pleasure and privilege, I welcome each and every one of you to the BIT Student Surgical Society's annual Burnout and Resilience panel. Today, I'm not going to sit here today and discuss the definition of burnout or anything regarding burnout because we have an entire panel of burnout experts. But what I am going to discuss in my welcome is a few matters that affect many students across the faculty. It is common knowledge that the curriculum across the faculty is overloaded with information and a tremendous amount of information coupled with inordinate hours, sleep deprivation, excess workload, overbearing clerical and administrative responsibilities, inadequate response from other health professionals, a large number of difficult patients, the conditions for learning are not always optimal. And we can all agree that the pandemic has had far-reaching consequences beyond the spread of the virus itself, and efforts to quarantine it has demonstrated an interrelation between social, geopolitical, and cultural factors of individuals' thought and behavior. The COVID-19 pandemic has been followed by a sharp spike in an increase in suicides, which has exacerbated which has been exacerbated by social isolation due to quarantines and social distancing guidelines, fear, unemployment, and other financial factors. And something closer to home is that the era of online education has certainly had the potential to contribute to negative mental health outcomes with elevated anxiety, depression, and stress. Many students, those in particular of vulnerable groups such as women, children, and members of the LGBT community, were forced to quarantine in unsafe environments, and hence we've seen an increase in domestic violence. If any of this speaks to you, I want you to know that you are not alone, and mental health problems is a legitimate medical condition. So I urge you to contact the Office of Student Support within the Faculty of Health Sciences. The number is displayed on the screen, our WIT Students Crisis Line, as well as the Resilience Health Center within the Office of Student Support for any form of support. Speak to someone that you trust, or if it involves any form of physical violence, to contact the police station that has jurisdiction over your area. I would like to end off with a very apt quote from the greatest superhero of all times, Barry Allen, or also known as the Flash. It doesn't matter if you're the slowest kid in gym class or the fastest man alive. Everyone is running to someone, from someone, or something. And no matter how fast you run, we all are running our own races at our own speed, and that we should be cognizant that the person next to us is also running their own race. And let's be mindful of that and be nice to people. I'll now hand you over to you, Brian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The word burnout is often thrown around in work and study environments. But what exactly is it? Burnout occurs when you have been grinding for so long that your life becomes nothing but a grind. It is more late nights, more caffeine, more energy drinks, more lunch at your table, and more weekends behind a computer screen. It is also spending less time at the gym, less healthy eating, and less moments to catch a breath. Whether you are being driven by ambition, or even if your schedule is being driven by someone else, burnout is the moment where everything gives, and this is more common than you may think. In that effort to keep up, you become overwhelmed, and that sense of being overwhelmed manifests as burnout. Our panel today is not a presentation on the anti-hustle movement or manifesto against hard work, but rather it is about knowing when to push yourself, when to slow down, and about creating boundaries that can help change your work and your life. If you are passionate, driven, or even obsessed, that can be a very good thing. It can lead to you creating something that is bigger than yourself. It can help you find meaning in your life, and you can even create something that can help other people. But if you are not clear on why exactly you are doing something, or if you had not set your intentions from the beginning, it can lead to some very intense problems, and things can get out of hand. When stress and exhaustion resulting from your job or studies build up, it can drain your energy and rob you of your sense of purpose. This is known as burnout, and it affects every part of you, your work, your relationships, and your health. Stresses start to build up and can make you feel hopeless and just plain miserable. Our panel this evening, consisting of talented doctors and professors who have a great deal of experience with mental health, will be discussing mental burnout prevention mechanisms as well as coping strategies in answering questions posed by students in the previous weeks. I will now hand over to Previn, who will be introducing our first speaker.
My apologies, I realized that my mic was on mute. Before I introduce our first speaker for today, I just want to introduce you to the platform of Menti. So Menti is going to generate a word cloud. I ask all of us attending this event tonight to please submit at least 3 words the way you would describe burnout. And we're going to generate a cloud, and we're going to determine at the end of this webinar, what does Menti mean to all of us? And it will help us for the next event and going forward in terms of our mental health outreach programs. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Kamal Gruber, who's an accomplished lecturer dedicated to teaching intensive and critical care nursing in the Department of Nursing Education. Her research interests include nursing-led care, advancing evidence-based practice. Her role in postgraduate supervision does not only extend to her students, but also recognize training students from other universities, such as the University of Pretoria, University of Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. I, in fact, very fortunate to receive some of this guidance under Prof when she chaired the research and graduate studies in the School of Therapeutic Sciences. And I can attest to the amount of knowledge that I've gained in that 1 year that I had the privilege to serve as a research rep under her. During her tenure in the department, she has held various departmental portfolios and some within the faculty. Shirley has presented at various national and international conferences and has also published national and international journals. And we are extremely honored and privileged that Prof has accepted our invitation to educate all of us. Thanks, Prof.
I would like to introduce Dr. Tejal Mora. She is currently a final year psychiatric registrar. She's currently a final year psychiatric registrar at the University of the Witwatersrand. Her passion for psychiatry began early in her career, and she obtained her diploma in mental health in 2016. She served on the Wit Psychiatry and South African Society of Psychiatrists Southern Gauteng Registrar Representative in 2019. She was also the chairperson of the 2019 Psychiatry Research Day Committee. Her registrarship has been filled with numerous achievements, including the College of Psychiatrists Lynn Gillis Medal 2018, Japanese Society of Psychiatry and Neurology Fellowship Award 2020, and Best Registrar Prize 2020, Wits Department of Psychiatry. She is currently a member of the World Psychiatric Association Early Career Psychiatrist section, and recently presented at the 20th WPA World Congress of Psychiatry. Her interests inter alia are burnout, postgraduate training, and research. Her hobbies include yoga, art, meditation, and running.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Dr. Ahmed Badat, we are extremely privileged to have him here today and has completed his Bachelor of Health Sciences in 2012, Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery in 2016, both at the University of the Witwatersrand. He's obtained his diploma in mental health from the College of Medicine in South Africa in 2019, and he's currently a first-year registrar in psychiatry at Wits University. Dr. Badat has recently completed his internship and his ComServe, so he's in the best position to advise us as students on the way forward in battling and combating burnout. And we are so privileged to have you here. Thank you, Doctor.
Dr. Ifuteng Tefo, originally from Mokopane in Limpopo. She graduated from the University of Cape Town in 2016 and completed her medical internship at Helen Joseph Hospital, as well as her community service at the Far East Rand Hospital. Dr. Tefo is currently an associate clinical lecturer in the Unit for Undergraduate Medical Education, School of Clinical Medicine, University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, and medical officer of the Emergency Department at Helen Joseph Hospital.
Dr. Shannon Lawsonberg. Dr. Lawsonberg, I felt it my responsibility tonight to read out your bio since you were my impilo mentor, and you were the only reason that I made it to Dev 1. Without you, I probably would still be in Dev 1. Dr. Lawsonberg is currently a clinical skills lecturer in the Unit for Undergraduate Medical Education, School of Clinical Medicine within the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. Dr. Lawsonberg has a deep passion for mental health and completed her diploma in mental health in 2019. She also has a passion for medical education and completed a postgraduate diploma in health science education in 2021. We're extremely privileged and honored to have you here, Dr. Lawsonberg, and I couldn't think of any other speaker when I was tasked with planning the burnout discussion tonight to other than to have you, because I have to share what I felt with you with the rest of the undergraduate population. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
And finally, we have Kimon Nicolades. He is currently a fifth-year medical student at Wits. He completed his BHSC degree in 2018 at Wits University. He was involved in multiple societies throughout his BHSC and GEMP degrees. He was a part of the Friends of MSF Physician Society and was a member of the executive committee of the Wits Student Surgical Society in 2020. He is currently passionate about clinical medicine and health science education. He is currently considering the specialization of hepatobiliary surgery or clinical hematology, but like most students, he has a long way to go. When he is not studying endlessly, he loves to read, watch comedies and series, and see his family and friends.
This is a quote that aptly describes the journey to Wits Medical School. And I'm such a huge fan of Lewis Hamilton, I had to add the quote. And I do think it's very important that concentration and mental toughness are definitely the margins of victory.
All right, so I'd like to just thank every single panelist here today. Such a privilege to have each and every one of you here. So just to get us started, I'm going to ask a question to the whole panel. The first question is, what is burnout and what are the indicators of burnout?
Hi, it's Prof. Shelley. I think the indicators that were set up in the word cloud was quite important. I think the emotional exhaustion, the fatigue, something that I didn't see on the word cloud was cynicism or lack of compassion. Negativity, lack of compassion, I think those are also behaviors associated with. And then a lot of talk around professional inefficiency. So that would be my definition of burnout, or my definition.
Thanks, Prof. Shelley. Yeah, I completely agree. I actually wanted to just see if I could share my screen. Sorry, let me just figure this out a little bit. Sorry. But yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me, first of all, and for considering me. So my name is Tejal, as I was introduced, and I'm a psychiatric registrar. Just a disclaimer, I'm not an expert, but it is my area of interest. And then also just another disclaimer that I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, not on behalf of a society or organization. But yeah, I think that burnout is not a new phenomenon. Already in 1974, Freudenberger coined the term. He's a psychoanalyst, and he was a psychoanalyst, and he first recognized it amongst the helping profession. So I think that's an important aspect to our care and what we offer patients. So it does put us at risk. And then Burish went on to develop 7 symptom clusters. And then currently the most widely recognized definition is exactly as Prof. Shelley said, it's the triad by Maslow et al. So they recognize emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, which is kind of a sense of feeling detached from your work, and then a complete kind of lack of personal accomplishment. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you also for inviting me to the panel. My name is Ahmed, and I'm a first-year psychiatry registrar. And just like Dr. Marara, also just want to put the disclaimer out there that I'm by no means an expert of any sorts with regards to burnout in an academic perspective. But like Prof. Shelley and Dr. Morara have touched on, burnout is a very specific clinical phenomena. And I think, like it was alluded to earlier in the start, it's one of those terms in mental health that get thrown around colloquially and can sometimes mean different things to different people, like trauma and depression. They get used in many different contexts. And that's why I think it is important that you're having this panel and that you're asking that question, and we're defining exactly what burnout is. And just to touch on that, they do say it's a state of exhaustion that somewhat when stress extends into such a degree that it affects your ability to cope. And just important to note that it is in the context of occupational factors as well as personal or individual factors. And like Dr. Morara alluded to, sometimes they refer to as the occupational disease that we as healthcare workers may develop in our line of work.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for those incredible answers. My name is Gabriel dos Santos, and along with Grant, I'm going to be asking a few of the questions which our students had about burnout tonight. Our next question is professional burnout a mechanism of psychological defense or depersonalization?
Dr. Mora, are you going to go first? I think you're the expert there.
Thanks, Prof. Shelley. I think that it definitely is a double-edged sword, especially in medicine, because I think a common defense mechanism in medicine is a sense kind of creating distance emotionally so that we can function in our roles as doctors and, kind of remain objective. But then I think the kind of flip side of that is that we feel disconnected from our work. So I think it is a very fine balance between kind of, remaining objective and being able to engage in our work and find meaning in it. So I think it is a defense mechanism. And I think that it's about how much we kind of engage in it and how far we take it. I'm not sure if that's useful.
Absolutely, I agree. I support that. The level of detachment and trying to keep things real. Thank you.
I think it's exactly as Dr. Morara and Prof. Shelley have said, that when burnout manifests in the sort of depersonalization, they sometimes mean that you start seeing patients as less humanizing, or in your mind, you may come up with ways to see the patient as less human. And when you read about this or even discussing it, it can sound quite harsh and almost like how awful of a doctor to ever think about this. But it is important to say that when it is described like this, it is the emphasis is that you're doing it to protect yourself because of the line of work that we're in. We do a lot of work where you are exposed to people in very vulnerable stages of their life. You've got to listen to their anxieties. You've got to contain people. So a lot of emotion and a lot of trauma gets put to you, and you've sort of been able to show that you're able to listen actively to the patient, but at the same time, you've got to contain your own emotion, and you have to find a way to go home and then manage this in some way or the other. And how this can manifest in terms of burnout is that you start distancing yourself from your patients. You can start trying to avoid patient contact or try to postpone your contact with patients, try to look for ways to get out of work. And again, this is not in any way to criticize someone and say they're a bad doctor. it is recognized as a coping mechanism for the type of emotional work that we do.
Dr. Badar, it's Prof. Shelley. That's actually a very, very nice explanation. But I also think what contributes to the fact is that we have to hold patients' information confidential. So you're almost holding everything inside of you and you've got no one to share it with. And I think that adds to the burden of the defense mechanism of distancing yourself. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for those amazing answers. On to our next question. As a student just starting out in the health professions, how do I prevent myself from suffering burnout?
So my name is Kimon, for those that didn't hear in the beginning. I feel like this is where I can sort of contribute as the one that is currently a student in medical school. I just want to say I agree with everything that everyone has been saying, that burnout it's a consequence of our work and how we go about our daily lives and our learning. And it's just something to be cognizant of in the beginnings of med school and throughout your journey, because at the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why you might end up failing and having an absolutely terrible time. So the way I found that it's maybe best just to take these as suggestions, because I'm also by no means an expert and not everything that works for me will work for others, is that you've got to really find your tribe in med school almost. Your friends in med school are the ones that will understand your med school problems and help you through those. The friends that you had in high school that maybe aren't studying medicine, they are also vitally important in that they help remove you from this constant thing that is medical school, seeing patients in your clinical years, working as a doctor, being on call. It's almost a never-ending cycle, and they're extremely important in helping protect you by removing you from that stress. Your family are always going to be a great source of support if they are the supportive type. By no means everyone's family is not the same. And just finding other outlets. I know I'm like saying things as if we all have time, but there's a question alluding to that later. But having things outside of medicine, even if it's just taking 10 minutes to walk around and appreciate the fact that the stars are shining and the sun is coming out in the morning, that also just helps to get through the day when you're beginning to feel overwhelmed.
Hi, I'm Dr. Defo Ituteng. I'd like to add to what Kimon has said. So I really think it's about striking a balance as far as possible. And I know it's much easier said than done. And I don't think that there is one human who can say that they get it right every single day, they give 100% every single day. It's not possible. But I really think that what we tend to do is we focus so much on our careers, we tend to let the other areas of our life we just forget about them essentially, or we don't nurture them at all. So it's important to spend some of your energy, or direct some of your energy rather, towards relationships, friendships, fun and recreation, your health, because ultimately, once we burn out, all of those sort of spheres or compartments get affected.
Ituteng, I definitely agree with you. I think sometimes we forget that we are still a person who has chosen to study medicine. We are still a person who is a doctor. I am not only a doctor. In fact, a lot of the good parts about me don't come from medicine. I think medicine can bring out my temper sometimes and my frustration that things aren't the way that I want them done and it's not perfect. And I think the best things about me actually come from not being a doctor. And you have to cultivate those parts of you outside of medicine, because we forget that we are people who have chosen a career, but my career does not define me. And I have to remember that my career does not define me. I love being a doctor. I love medicine. I care for my patients very deeply, but it is not the whole extent of who I am as a person. And I have to work daily at that. I have to remind myself every single day about that thing. And I think you have to make a conscious decision to remind yourself of that every day for the rest of your life that you choose to be a doctor. And I think it's just very easy to forget that.
Thank you so much for all of those answers. I really resonate with the concept of finding a balance in your life. On that note, would you say that sometimes you need to accept that your academics might take a bit of a knock? We all have such high expectations on ourselves academically, being in medical school. Is it all right that sometimes our marks might drop a little bit in order for us to prioritize our own mental health?
I think that's a really, really good question. I've actually had a patient before who was a medical student, and she asked me a similar question, and she said in the end, once you qualify, is it worth it? And I said, it's not worth giving your mental health up for. So for me, I think that, sorry, if I can screen share just one more time. I have quite an interesting slide on this. So I guess it's similar to this question is how can you prevent burnout when your goal is to achieve exam results greater than 80%? And I think this is exactly what Dr. Lautenberg said. You are not the work you do, you are the person you are. So this little kind of shallow wins versus deep wins, I got from Brene Brown's LinkedIn page. And Brene Brown is an excellent speaker. I think if you guys get a chance to watch her TED Talk, you really should. But basically, she speaks about vulnerability, but she also speaks about worthiness. And I think that when we chase marks in medical school, it really kind of reduces the whole experience of medical school to 2 digits, when actually you as a person have kind of had so many richer experiences, you've grown so much as a person. So for example, someone who would get 55% at the end of medical school, but has grown in amazing ways in terms of strength of character, in terms of, other aspects of their lives. I think that's not recognized enough. And I think that we need to recognize for how things stand at the moment, I think we need to recognize that within ourselves. So instead of kind of measuring at the end of medical school, I got this mark, I think there are a lot of other measures of success that we need to focus on in terms of what are the types of relationships we've built, what kind of hobbies have I excelled in, how have I, strengthened my characters through the 6 years, how have I become resilient. So I think that marks at the end of the day, as we are kind of to a certain extent defined by them in the sense that you can pass or not. But I think beyond that, I don't think it makes you a good doctor just by virtue of getting a good mark. I think that there's a lot more we can kind of strive towards. And I also think that when we have deep wins, which is kind of this not driven by a sense of not feeling good enough or that, I need to get these marks and kind of urgency and self-doubt, I think these deep wins are really something that can really make your life a lot more meaningful rather than kind of just looking at marks. I'm not sure if that's useful. Yeah.
I'm willing to share like my own story through this. I mean, Dr. Lautenberg can attest because I was in her office a lot in Game 1 and Game 2. She's the reason I'm in Game 3 really, as part of it as a mentor, in that I was defining my beginning of my game career in getting distinctions because I felt I had something to prove getting in through the graduate program and not getting in through my original matric marks or anything like that. And I mean, my older brother's a doctor, and he had to really be the one that sat down and told me that said, getting 80% isn't going to make me a good doctor. And being in the clinical years now and having worked with patients, especially now in obs and gynae, you might be getting 85, 90%, but you are not then the one that's going to be able to sit and counsel your patients because you're not caring enough. You're not seeing the love and the joy of medicine. And I think that's what we need to as students as to drive us, is that why are we doing this career? You are in medicine, presumably, I hope, to help people and to make an impact in the best way you know how. And getting good marks is part of it because you've got to pass in the end. But that's not what's going to make you the doctor that connects with your patient, counsels your patient, and actually make sure that everything is working well in the ward, or even if you can drip the patient. I mean, 90% doesn't mean you can find that extremely hard drip, and bloods and drips will humble you. I promise, they will humble you immediately. And sometimes it is okay to just take time out in the beginning of a block or in the beginning of a rotation and say, today I'm not working. Today I'm going to put on the Golden Girls, I'm going to enjoy myself, I'm going to drink a cup of tea, and I'm going to sit with my cat and just enjoy a quiet night where I don't have to be a doctor or think about medicine. And then you can pencil in some more study time later on, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to study, you have to pass the block. And yeah, I think it's something you have to get used to as a type A personality, in the sense of not being perfect all the time as well. And you have to forgive yourself for that as well. And I find that the forgiveness aspect is something that we struggle with and contributes to our burnout as well.
I agree with what Kimon is saying, and I just want to add a little bit to what has been said so far. So I think often we forget the implications or the manifestations of neglecting our mental health. So whether that means being admitted to a psychiatric facility, whether that means attempting suicide, committing suicide, falling asleep behind the wheel, rather. We don't know how a story is going to end, but I think we often forget that it can get that deep. And I think for me, just based on personal experience, the best thing that I did for myself was to take a break from medicine when I realized that I had burnt out. At the end of ComServe, I took a break for 3 months, and it has made me a better doctor in every sense of the word. It's the one thing that I don't regret at all. And I know some of my colleagues who work at Helen Joseph's ED full-time are feeling very sort of burnt out right now. And some of the things that they're doing include sort of selling their calls so that they don't have to do as many shifts. And, you know, from a sort of an outside point of view, you'd think, wow, okay, maybe don't do that. But at the same time, it's like, sometimes I think we need to step back and realize that we're not okay. And it's okay to shift our focus when we're not okay and sort of direct our energies elsewhere. And when we feel better, we can direct more of our energy towards academics again.
Thank you, Dr. Tefo. I just wanted to touch on something you said, which I think may resonate with a lot of us in the medical field, in that there's so much pressure on you to follow a timeline where you almost think, okay, I need to get out of high school, and then it needs to be med school, then it's internship, then it's ComServe, then I need to do reg time. There's that pressure to follow that succession. And when you said it's so important to recognize when you need to take time out and realize it's not, so I may be a year or two behind where my colleagues started, but if that's going to be what's best for me at the end of the day and going to be able to make me reach my full potential, taking those few months apart, that's exactly what needs to happen. There was also something Kimon said that I just wanted to touch on when he said you need to go, like today I'm going to decide to go home and watch series or relax. And that when I was in when I was in internship, we got a lecture on burnout. And one of the protective mechanisms the lecturer used was the word deliberate relaxation. And I was like, oh my God, you're saying deliberate relaxation like relaxing is a sin. But that's what happens when you're working sometimes, is that you can start feeling guilty about taking some time off. And you've actually got to make that, you've got to make it very purposeful, the time you set aside for yourself. And you need to be forceful with yourself. Just like you say, today I'm going to study, I'm going to do this chapter, I'm going to go through all these objectives. You've got to take that same discipline and carry it into, well, this weekend I'm not studying, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for whatever I say, whatever I need to replenish and refresh myself.
Hi, it's Prof. Shelley. I absolutely agree. I want to touch on two things that Dr. Tefo said. Right in the beginning, she spoke about balance. And I think we look at it from a very mature perspective, but one also needs to consider the first year students coming in or the second year, where they are driven by high marks. And for me, you can say now that, balance your life, do this, take time out or whatever, but a younger person has got to learn that. And the balance that Dr. Tefo talks about. So if you are going to push high marks, how do you take care of the risk of burnout or overload? So exercise, healthy living, that must be emphasized. So it's your personal commitment to push high marks, but balance it. Be very, very aware of the signs and symptoms and know how you balance, and then bring in the other things from experience. Thank you.
I think the greatest piece of advice I was ever given in medical school was after the first exam I failed. And my entire rotation group all did phenomenally well. And I got like 20%. And everyone was like, oh, Shannon, I'm so sorry, that sucks. And you can see the sympathy in their eyes and, oh, you'll get through it. And you think, what do you know? And my mother said to me, who cares if they passed? Why are you comparing yourself to them? You are not the same as them. You don't have the same problems as them. You don't have the same interests. You don't have the same abilities as them for the same reason that they don't have the same abilities that you do. And I think in medicine, we are so competitive. And I don't know why. It makes no sense to me, because actually your colleagues, your friends in varsity, the fellow interns with you, your fellow comserves, they are supposed to be your greatest friends. They are some of the only people in the whole world who understand where you are and what you're going through. Because no one in my family is a doctor. My husband's not a doctor. Majority of my friends aren't doctors. So they don't always understand when I say, yes, I had a bad recess and a patient died. And everyone's like, oh, that's tough. And you're like, well, yeah, it's terrible. I want to talk about it and you don't get it. But if I called one of my interns who was on call in Rustenburg, she'd be like, let's talk about it. What happened? How are you doing? So I think if I can give a piece of advice is use each other as friends, use each other as support, and don't compare yourself with each other. So what? So Alan got 80% and you got 59. Of course you feel let down. It sucks. You put so much effort in and you didn't get the mark that you feel like you deserved. But you and Alan aren't the same. And there might come a test where he gets 59 and you get 80%, and it actually doesn't matter. So I think the biggest advice I can give is to stop competing with each other and comparing yourself to each other, and rather support each other. Because I think if you take that competitive element out of medicine, whether it's med school or internship or comserve or being a reg or consultant or whatever, I think we would actually alleviate a lot of pressure off ourselves and our friends. And I think that's a huge thing that contributes to burnout, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for those amazing answers. I liked what Dr. Bladatz and Kimon said about deliberate relaxation. Kimon, I'll put you on a better series. Friends is way, way better. Going on to another question, something that I've experienced personally. Around mental health, there's always a stigma attached to it. How do we as students sort of break that stigma that in med school burnout is the goal? if you're not burning out, not working hard enough, how can we as students sort of change that stigma?
I actually smiled when I saw this question, because I think as psychiatrists, we have to kind of be experts with stigma, because that's just one of the major kind of obstacles we face. And I'm actually preparing for my Part 2 exams at the moment, and I thought I'd share a little bit with you my study notes. So it's actually not a simple, like in terms of the definition of stigma, there are a lot of different types of stigma. So I think as kind of doctors and medical students, self-stigmatization is a huge kind of factor. So basically, I think that we sometimes feel very guilty when we take time off. There's this huge culture of kind of presenteeism. So even when you are not feeling well, you still kind of push yourself to go to work and to study. And I think that that's something we really need to work on as the medical kind of fraternities, on ourselves and the self-stigmatization. Because at the end of the day, we are human too. So taking sick days and kind of, suffering from mental illness is normal. It's human. It's part of the human experience. So I think self-stigmatization is something we really need to work on. And then I think that also institutional stigma, I think that, that happens at kind of a higher level, where you see that institutes don't spend as much time or emphasis on mental well-being. So I think that's something that we constantly need to be fighting. And I think there's, we are in kind of a really nice situation in the sense that we can change things for people who are coming behind us. So things like, the amount of hours we work, or, what is expected of us as from the institution. I think that if we change those kinds of things, it's also very important. But yes, from the different types of stigma, I probably think institutional and self-stigmatization is one of the biggest influences in medicine. And then kind of strategies to address the stigma. I think that self-management is very important. So I think, as you mentioned, kind of having your support structure is very important. And we kind of underestimate that at times. So I think looking after ourselves and self-management and kind of talking yourself down when you have this anxiety around skipping work or skipping days, if you need it. And then I think that education is very important, which is so nice, like that you guys are actually organizing these things as students so we can educate each other. And self-advocacy as well, kind of the individual needs to feel empowered enough to stand up for themselves. So I think that is something we need to work on. And then for me, I think research is always something that's quite concrete. So for me, research is so important. If you can kind of do research amongst doctors and get the sense of how they are feeling, or students, then you can actually take that to authorities and say, look, this is the burden we're carrying, and this is how many patients we see a day, or this is what is expected of us. And if you put it down in black and white, sometimes I think that's a lot more it's kind of evidence to change kind of the institution and the way things are going. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Moraro. I'm going to come steal those study notes from you. I just wanted to say something Dr. Lautenberg said earlier about being kind to each other. And I just want to say that on that note, sometimes we in the medical field are so unkind to each other, in the sense that when there may be someone booked off or someone called in sick for multiple days, it will almost be like a bit of gossip that goes around, like, oh, this one's booked off, or, oh, I can't believe I have to work with this one who's booked off. And that person gets stigmatized so much. And I know from my own experience, if I need to take a sick day or take some time off, the anxiety is always around, what are my colleagues going to say? And who's going to be there to cover for me? And, oh, it's going to be a burden to this one, and it's going to be a burden to that one. And they're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in a rotation with him, and he needs to be booked sick, or like booked off sick or something like that. So some of those things are structural, right? In the sense of when you shouldn't need to be thinking about who's there to cover you when you booked off sick, but that's our reality, in that we know when we need to be booked off, it means more work for the rest of our colleagues. And the fact that that expectation lies on us is very unfair. And again, it's structural issues. And Dr. Morara has actually done research on psychiatry registrars and the prevalence of burnout within the group. And that's why she's doing a lot of work in trying to raise awareness on how prevalent burnout actually is. But sometimes the structural issues are not going to be able to be solved by us right then and there. But what we can do is just boils down to the single principle of kindness, and just to be kind to each other. Realize why someone's booked off sick. You don't have to question it, even though it may mean more work for yourself. Just try to be empathetic and think of the other person and the reality that they may be facing, and remember that the difficulties that you face as a result of the structure that you work in is not because of your colleagues. You can't shift the blame onto them.
So I just want to add a little bit to what's been said so far. It's just something that I personally feel very strongly about, is the Crazy Socks for Docs Day. So it's just one day in a year where we decide, hey, we're wearing colorful socks, and it ends there. And I really regard that as performative activism, because after that, what happens? We sort of go into exactly what Ahmed has just said, where we then vilify our colleagues who don't come to work because they are feeling unwell, for example. So I think there are certain things that are already in place, but that can be used better. So if you're the only guy who says, hey guys, let's talk about being overwhelmed on that particular day, you already have sort of made a step in the right direction. So start conversations, normalize being overwhelmed. And you'll actually realize that a lot of the people around you feel exactly the same way. And of course, the being kind to each other thing is of utmost importance.
I just want to give a quick example, particularly to the younger students and those also coming into the clinical years. There is still a culture amongst the senior consultants, not all of them, but quite a few of them, where you are crucified for not knowing everything. And I want to say to you, you will never know everything. It's okay. You will never remember the minuscule nerve in the pelvis, in your gynae rotation. And sometimes you just forget in that exact moment because you're a little bit overwhelmed. I mean, I'll give an example from my own psychiatric rotation where I completely blanked about the dopaminergic pathways in the brain and that there are 4 of them. And I was beating myself up so much. I was like, I did this last year. I should have remembered it. It's like literally fresh in my brain. It's okay. And you need to just sort of tell yourself that on most occasions and have your colleagues also remind you, it's okay. You're doing a good job. At the end of the day, you will also be fine. And maybe you won't have to remember that nerve if you don't decide to become a gynecologist, for example.
I think we are also very quick to forget that in the real world of medicine, you can Google something you don't know because you can't remember everything. And some days I can't remember the dose of Adalat, or I don't know how much Zocor I should give a patient, or I can't remember what the contraindications are for this medication, and can you have it? And I don't at all feel like I'm a bad doctor for knowing that, because I have it available to me and I can check. And I would much rather make 100% sure that I'm doing the right thing for my patient than be so I can't think of the right word, maybe bold or cocky to think I know it's in there somewhere and I don't need to check. So I think you guys also, you know, like Dr. Morar said, like, there is a lot of stigma that comes from yourself that if I have to check an answer or I don't know an answer, I'm stupid and I'm not going to be a good doctor. But you know what? It is impossible to know everything about everything in medicine. And if you go into medicine with that attitude, you are going to set yourself up for failure because there is nothing wrong with you and you are not stupid, but you are a human being and you are going to forget things. Obviously, we have certain liberties being outside of med school. You can't pick up your phone and Google something in an exam. I understand that. But, you know, when you move past this, your whole life isn't going to be med school. And when you move past this, when you forget something, you'll pick up the textbook or you'll ask your colleague or you'll have a chat with your consultant about it or you'll Google it and you'll figure it out. And maybe tomorrow you'll remember it and maybe tomorrow you won't. But there is no shame in making sure that you double check yourself before you give your patient the wrong medication or you refer them for the wrong procedure. And I think if we can also try and remind ourselves of that, we would potentially help alleviate some of the burnout that we feel from this pressure of having to know everything and never being able to check an answer or ask a friend for help.
There's just a quick story I want to say, adding on to what Dr. Lautenberg has said. From one of the professors of surgery, he says this quite often, in that when he was studying and training to be a surgeon, there was one chapter on thyroid surgery. And now thyroid surgery is literally its own textbook and subspecialty of general surgery. So information will forever change. And sometimes the consultants don't actually take that into account when they're grilling you on the ward round. So just also always keep that in the back of your mind and be okay with it. You'll get.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, sometimes the most difficult relationships come from team members that become quite arrogant when you question something. And I put it down to when you're not confident, your reaction is to be cocky. And I think that often happens with students or with junior people. And I liked what Dr. Lautenberg said, that you can never know it all. And I just love your smile and I love your happiness. And I think that is so wonderful to aspire to. You are an amazing role model. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for all of the inputs. I really enjoyed how Dr. Tefu and Dr. Badat spoke about how we could be kind to each other in our degrees, because like Dr. Lautenberg said, our colleagues are meant to be our best friends in our degree. So we're wondering, what are some practical ways that you could help some of your colleagues that you can see are suffering with mental health issues?
So I think what we're doing here is already a step in the right direction. So just education is so important. So that when we engage with people who are suffering from mental health issues, we don't engage in such a way that we become insensitive. It's about making sure that they know that they have your support. That means if they don't come to campus, you have their back in terms of getting them notes. And it also means that you're going to check up on them regularly and you're going to celebrate even the small victories. So what you think may be small, maybe something extremely big in their life. So for example, whoa, you have been going to all of your psychology appointments, you're taking your medication, or you are coming to campus regularly. So celebrate the things that they are managing to do, and also don't change your approach to them too much. So if your vibe is that you guys like to go hiking, for example, invite them 6 times. The 7th time, maybe they'll agree and they'll remember you for being that friend who persisted in terms of being there for them.
I agree. I remember when we were in varsity, we had like a group amongst the whole students. It was facilitated by our class rep, and it had every past paper, every set of notes that some senior had written that was deemed good, and it was put in this folder. And if somebody got something, everybody got it. And if there was a student who wasn't willing to share because they were trying to be super competitive or whatever, then people were actually a bit upset, because we're in this together. It's a team effort. We're all going to help each other get through this. And it became a very big culture in my class that whatever we had, we shared with each other. And okay, sometimes it was very far off the mark. And then like the whole group collectively did very badly in something because we based our studying on the past paper that did not really help. But it was very uplifting to know that everybody had each other's back. There was support. If somebody had a friend at a different university who sent them things, it was shared between us all. So I do think I'm going to say the same thing again. I think the less we compete with each other, the less pressure we will put on each other, and the more that we can help each other out. And I think if you can create a supportive environment for your friends where you don't judge them and they can feel comfortable perhaps speaking to you about something they might be embarrassed to tell their parents or their siblings or their partner, it just gives a little shred of hope in the darkness that there is somebody who actually cares. And I think knowing the symptoms of burnout and having learned all of what you guys have learned today, you need to put what you've learned today in practice. And if you see somebody struggling, have a chat with them, send them a message, like, look, man, I'm sorry, you don't seem okay today. Is there something I can do to help? Because I think just feeling supported in all of this is what we actually all really want. And sometimes just hearing that somebody else is having just a bad time as you are is all you really need to know, that it's not you, it's the environment that we're in, and we can come through it.
Thank you so much, doctors. I liked what Dr. Lautenberg said. Sort of like we're a team unit, and even just sending your friend a message and just to see how they are, like Dr. Tefo said about getting notes for them, and just small things that add up to something great. Kimon, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
All right. So going on, do you think that the era of online education during the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with the social isolation, has greater consequences in terms of burnout for students?
I saw Prof's hand was raised. I don't know if Prof wants to start. Otherwise,
it's fine. Kimon, you can continue. I think my signal's dipping quite a lot.
Okay. Yeah, so this is just going to be another anecdote really from my own experience, in that the COVID pandemic really came out of nowhere, and it sort of forced us to scramble, and it forced our educators to scramble. And so it was a very difficult time on both sides. And I think that's not really acknowledged very fairly from the perspective of the students. It's always, oh, this is so bad for me, but we don't really take into account how difficult it was for them as well. But, we were forced to go into isolation, into environments that maybe weren't all safe for us, that weren't all comfortable for us. We were forced into a new idea of living where everything was uncertain, and you still had to tackle the difficult task of now studying medicine by correspondence. A massive workload compressed into a number of weeks. And now this is coming from where you're now at home. You're living at home, maybe with all of your family. There's no peace to study. Not everyone is privileged enough to have a dedicated study space. So now you're studying where you live, the lines are being blurred. You're pushing yourself extraordinarily hard because you still want to succeed. Your family might be pushing you instead of supporting you. And it just becomes this mishmash of horror and a perpetual cycle of pushing yourself into a worse and worse state of burnout. I mean, I literally pushed myself into a point last year where I wanted to have my week's worth of lectures done by Tuesday. How insane is that? I wanted to do a full week's worth of very long lectures in basically 2 days and then give myself time to study. And I wasn't expecting to be exhausted. That has sort of changed in the clinical years because you're still engaging online with some of your work and not necessarily learning from TUTs, which is kind of difficult as well because it's more practical concepts that you now need to absorb in a less active way, but it's still better in terms of being in the clinical space and actually working with patients and learning actively. And since we're at a lower stage of lockdown now, that's been a lot, we've obviously been a lot better, but you need to be careful with online learning from the student perspective, in that you have to really become disciplined in setting yourself up a manageable timetable. Follow the timetable that uni gives you. Follow it. It won't lead you wrong because it's designed in a manageable way. It's designed for you to follow and still have time to study and do extracurricular activities. So be disciplined in that. Give yourself a break. Like we've been saying, you need to actually, look after yourself as well. And you really need to just get good at your prioritization in terms of your learning, because it's very difficult to manage studying, listening to this hour-long lecture, reading a course pack, not having printed notes. It's a whole new system, and you need to really find what works for you. So I would also just say trial and error is something that you need to also get used to, in terms of maybe you don't have the time to write out all your notes. You have to now become reliant on a computer, and that's a bit of a shock for some people that are a bit more old school. So just always, everything with balance, and don't be too hard on yourself, like we've all been saying. And I just, on a special note, just remember that the lecturers are also in as difficult a predicament as you are. They're not going to respond to your angry email at 11 o'clock at night because this link is not working. Please just acknowledge that it's also difficult for them.
So I just want to add to what Kimon has just said. So we recently had a journal club, and it was essentially about the implications of COVID-19 on medical education, and obviously the effects on our students as well. And it certainly has been a very tough time for everyone. And I mean, reduced in-person teaching means far less communication with the people around you. And it also means far less opportunity to sort of debrief about what it is that you're going through. But at the same time, I think part of the discussion that we had was about how we as educators as well are in a position where we don't want you to fail. We don't want you to not do well. So we are doing the most behind the scenes to make sure that you get through the curriculum, and we'll always be considerate, even when we're marking you, that it's been tough. I did not do medicine. Well, I wasn't in med school in the middle of a pandemic. So I will consider that, and I'll be kind to you even when I mark you.
I absolutely agree. It was very, very hard shifting into online. But something that I noticed with many of the students, the structure, discipline, and organization. Kimon, you raised that. It's extremely important. Set your priorities. Have a structure. Don't work 24 hours. Space your work out and separate yourself from your computer at time and go and do some exercise or do some walking and balance. It comes back to Dr. Tefo's balance.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a quick comment on what Kimon said. It's completely normal if you make a study timetable and you don't stick to it. That has happened to me multiple times, and I have the sense of guilt. I put away a week for schizophrenia, and now it's taken me a month to study schizophrenia. And I think it's normal that as much as we try for structure, you are human. And sometimes, in one of your weeks that you've got put away for studying, you fall sick, or something happens in your family, so it's completely normal to kind of not always be able to follow that structure, because you are human at the end of the day.
There is just one more thing I want to add as just a little insert of advice to the GIMP 1 and the GIMP 2s. Maximize your in-person learning and clinical skills. Really, it's extremely, extremely important when you enter the wards next year. You really are only getting that one opportunity before you go practice on your friends and your family who don't have pathology or who cannot give you the tips and the tricks on how to do things correctly and in a way that you will pass your exam. You will develop your own style and play or whatever, but you really need to maximize on it, and also maximize on the time with your group. Debrief about how bad that one ChemPath lecture was and how hard it is going to be to study, because those are your people who are going through it with you. So in those few minutes before you go into the rooms, talk to each other, quickly grab a coffee at Olive's, decompress, like have a little coffee club, tea club where you sit and you moan, because those are the people that get it. And that way you're not going to moan to everyone else in your life and then they say, oh, let me talk about med school. So have your people where you have your little coffee club and you moan, and then, you go, you do it, you get it done.
Kimon, if you need a job in the clinical skills unit, come and speak to Dr. Tefo and I. We can arrange something for you based on the nice things you're saying about us.
It's all coming from learned experience, so.
If I can just add one thing, the Prof. Kramer always speaks about balance and you have to have a madness in your life. So everything can't all just be about medicine, and one should take something that you would never ever think of. And I remember with my daughter when she was studying, it was all medicine, medicine, medicine. And I said to her, you've got to do something. So she said to me, like what? I said, oh, go and do ballroom dancing. And up to today, she still does ballroom dancing, but we never ever laugh. She's got 2 left feet. She's a terrible dancer, but we never ever say anything. We encourage her to go to ballroom dancing. So I think having a madness is important. Be human and stay real.
This was such an interesting panel discussion, and we're really having an internal debate whether to go on. And I was like, oh, we have to go on. We have to finish all those questions, and it's so interesting, and we're having so much fun. But I do understand everyone is rushing home to be with their families, our attendees as well as our panelists, and we really come to the end of it. And if there's any closing remarks from our panelists, please share them, and the floor is open to whatever you have to say in conclusion to us as students. I've truly enjoyed this. I'm grateful to Dr. Tefo and Dr. Loschenberg for their suggestions, and that they're going to mark us leniently in our exams, and that's making me smile. That's making me a lot easier for next week's paper in MSK. I'm so grateful to Dr. Murad, Dr. Badat, and Kimon for all of the expert opinion. And I'm so grateful for my team as well, that we've selected such an amazing group of panelists, because I think we've really covered the topic of burnout so well. And I feel so more prepared as a student in medicine at Wits University. More so if there's any closing remarks, please, you're most welcome to share them now.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, sorry.
Sorry.
It's fine, Tejal, you can go.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this discussion. I did want to share the slide because I think it's so important. But it's a kind of network that Dr. Antoinette Murich in private has set up. It's called the Healthcare Workers Care Network. And you can just Google them, but they've got such amazing resources on kind of practical ways to take care of yourself. And they're also offering free services. So I think it's at least 3 free counseling services, and there's psychiatrists that have also signed up. So if you need to see a psychiatrist, you'll also be fast-tracked via this network. So I think this is very important. And then just a kind of last slide to say there's always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. I think when we speak about burnout constantly, we do forget that there is light. And yeah, I'm so excited if this is the future of medicine, because I think all of these students and their insightful ideas, it's so motivating. So thank you.
Thank you, Tejal. I just wanted to add on something just also to conclude, in that a lot of the times people will ask me, especially final year students, where's the best place to do internship? And I know you don't have a lot of control over that. But what I will say, especially in terms of preventing burnout, is that you need to be able to identify what outside of hospital replenishes and refreshes you. So if for you that's your family, then if possible, try to apply somewhere close to your family. For me, it's being able to go to a big mall where there's an H&M and a Zara and there's a coffee post-school and I can do a lot of shopping. So be able to identify, and this must be as important as when you move to a new place, you sort of look at where you're going to live and where's the closest mall and where's the closest GP, etc. Identify what for you is going to be your source of replenishment. If that's nature, if that's hiking, like I said, that's family, make sure that you identify that and you make it a deliberate part of your lifestyle. The other sort of resource that I also wanted to share that has been evidence-based in preventing burnout is mindfulness. And this again gets thrown out a lot and lots of people don't know what it means. So I'll ask Praveen to share this website. So there's a resource from Oxford University called Oxford Mindfulness, where there's a whole lot of sessions that's free and accessible and that you can practice yourself. And it takes you through the process of learning mindfulness. And I really think if possible, it should be something that you should try to incorporate within your lifestyle. It has been proven to reduce stress, to improve cognitive flexibility, and again, to help burnout. And lastly, I just want to say, I care so much for medical students. And when I see people like Dr. Lotenberg and Dr. Teffel, who's relating so well to students, and I was there one day myself, and it's just so encouraging to know that there are people like you in the faculty. It makes me smile and it's reassuring. And lastly, just to the Surgical Society, thank you so much for doing this as a topic. When I was a vis student, I remember being part of the Surgical Society because there was a dark stage in my life where I thought I might do surgery. I can't believe it. But anyway, and all the topics used to be about vascular surgery, this and the latest sophisticated, which undoubtedly is why the Surgical Society is there. But it's just so encouraging to see that you're exploring topics like this and that you're willing to engage with colleagues outside of the scope, because surgeons are not always the best at managing burnout. So it's really reassuring that you realize when to step outside of your expertise and, you know, to call people who may know something more about a different topic. And that's how we're all going to learn, because we all have limitations to our knowledge. We're not the best at knowing everything. So thank you so much for inviting me and for this initiative.
I also just want to say a quick word of thanks. It's an honor to be here in my old society, 1 year out. giving my insights on something I've been experiencing these last 4 months. Must be honest, it's been a tough adjustment to the clinical years. It's been a very rough assessment week as well. OSCE is tomorrow, and we'll see. But my closing remarks will be in the sense of take what you've learned from here, be empathetic to each other, respect each other, work together, like Dr. Lautenberg has been saying. And I also just want to say a word, you can lean on each other, but also through your years, you'll also find mentors, whether they'll be older students or clinicians in a field you're interested in, or the clinical skills unit, because mostly they're your MPLO mentors. You can lean on them. They can help you with their experience and their knowledge and take you through things in a way that is more on your level, not so academic, but more in a peer sort of way. And that is almost invaluable in preventing your burnout as well, because it helps remind you that this isn't some scary far off doctor. This is Dr. Lautenberg, who drinks a lot of tea and is very funny, who, you know, I know a little bit better, who's now helping me through this. And, you know, I'm relating more, and I can get through this. She's told me I can get through this, I can get through this. I'm saying this because Dr. Lautenberg's the reason I got through psych in 4th year, and I saw the benefit of it through passing 5th year, I hope. So yeah, just good luck to everyone.
Kimon, I think you hold us to a very high standard that is very difficult to uphold. I will take it though. But like you said, you guys must remember the only people you have direct contact with at the moment is the clinical skills team. But we've chosen to be in this place because we deeply care about students, and we want you to be good, kind doctors who are competent and who are the future of medicine of our country. And we are here for you. And we can't always fix everything, and we can't always make everything better, but there is somebody in the department who is always willing to listen to you and to try and find an avenue to help you go where you need to go. So it can be talking to someone at the clinical skills unit after your session, or sending one of us an email. But the whole reason that we are there is because we really care about each and every one of you, and we want you to succeed. So don't forget that. If you have nowhere else to go, send one of us an email, because we are always here and we will help you find where you need to go, because you aren't alone in this. And though some of us have been through it a lot longer ago, we were there once too, and it also sucked a lot of the time. So we can find a way to make it better.
Praveen, it's Prof. Shelley. If I can just say, it's been an absolute honor to speak, to be invited here, and to share the space with an amazing panel of experts. But to the students, never ever lose your humanness. Like the patients that you treat, you can also become ill. And I sometimes think that us becoming ill reminds us that we are human beings as well. Because the ability to care for a patient is what sets us apart. And it will set you apart. A patient, you know you're there when a patient says, thank you for what you did. I'm pain-free, you made me comfortable. Those are the things that matter. But look after yourselves as well. Work as a team. And then finally, today is Mental Health Day. It's Mental Health Awareness Day. So Praveen and the team, thank you for choosing this. You hit the nail on the head. I think we need to highlight the issues that medical students face a bit more in the faculty. I was quite shocked when I looked at some of the figures. I thought as an ICU person, my levels were high, of burnout, but I'm quite shocked to see some of the figures. And I think by highlighting that, students might be more open to coming forward and speaking about burnout and depression and suicidal thoughts. So thank you very much. And I wish everyone every bit of success.
If there's no other closing remarks, I'm so glad to hear that today was actually World Health Day, Mental Health Day. I had no idea, and it was just a lucky coincidence. We actually moved the date because the original date was Dr. Lawson's birthday, and we were like, no, we have to have a year. And so we were like, no, we can't have it on her birthday. She has to celebrate it. I'm not sure, Dr. Do you have anything to say? I felt like you were going to say something, and I sort of spoke ahead.
No, I really just felt like all the panelists had said something, and it would have been awkward if I didn't. But look, this is something that I feel very passionate about, and I'm really, really, really happy to have been part of such a discussion. And I really just, if we were in, I don't know, an auditorium of some sort, I'd literally ask you guys to just clap for yourselves as a society, because this is incredible. I'm actually so impressed with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeffo. And thank you so much again, once again, to all of our speakers. Like, we really, I learned so much. And if I could have this thing running the whole night, I really would. But unfortunately, we can't. And so in the start of the presentation, I asked everyone to please submit 3 words that describe burnout. And because burnout is something that's used interchangeably, and I know for me, I use the word very incorrectly, and I often say that I'm burnt out and I'm just feeling tired. But it means something to different people. So we made up a word cloud from our attendees. So I'm going to share that now, and we can all have a look at what burnout means to all of us. I'm just going to share my screen. So this is the word cloud that each person submitted, and I hope that everyone can see it more clearly. I'll just try and zoom in. So to many people, it means exhaustion, stress, fatigue, the lack of functioning, emotional exhaustion, disinterested, underperforming, overwhelming, unhealthy, loss of focus, disengagement, lack of empathy, medical school, overwhelmed, unmotivated, frustration, tiredness, quitting, sleeplessness, motivating, anxiety, hopelessness, and worthlessness. And as we can see, they really mean something different to each one of us, because like I said at the start of this presentation, that we all are running our own race, and we should all be cognizant that we all are running our own race. While we run apart, we should all run together. I'll now hand you over to Andri, who's going to announce our raffle winner for the Easter egg drive.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Because I just want to do that random number generator. So for most of you here tonight, or you might not know, but we recently had an Easter egg drive, and we collected loads of Easter eggs for the pediatric wards at Baragwanath and Charlotte. And apart from the generous sponsorship we got from Beacon and Roll and Partner, the students overwhelmed us with support. And as our gift to them, for each student who donated a box or boxes, they were entered into a raffle, and they could win, 2 students could win a pair of scrubs sponsored by the Smile Foundation and Surgeons for Little Lives. So now we're quickly going to do that draw. So let me see if this will work. Okay. Share. Can you see the random number generator? Okay, so there were 21 people who donated. So the first winner is number 3. And that is listed as Lorato Mupuli. So congratulations, Lorato. And then the second one, okay, let's just clear. Number 9. And that one is Esha Bula. So I've highlighted them on the, can you still see I don't know how to exit this. So I've highlighted those winners on my Word document. And yay, so we'll be in contact with the winners. And that's very exciting. So congratulations, and thanks to everyone who donated. The kids were, they were overjoyed. And we are so happy that we could make such a positive difference with your help. So congratulations to the winners. Thank you.
Thanks, Auntie. I actually attended the Easter egg drive at Nara, my apologies, at Charlotte. And it was such a joy to see the smiles on those faces as we walked into the ward with our bunny ears. And it really was such a blessing. And I wasn't actually supposed to join you guys. But now I just want to hand you over to our chair of the WIT Students Bioethics Society, who wants to just discuss some of our committee applications. The WIT Students Bioethics Society is something so close to my heart. It is one of the only societies on campus that really talk the relevant discussions, and we really are fighting for social equality and for all of those relevant bioethical considerations. The Bioethics Society, without bioethics, you can't be a medical doctor, because the very principle of being a medical doctor is to uphold the Hippocratic Oath. And I'll now hand you over to our chair, who will discuss more about the perks of being part of such an amazing society.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raquel Midley, and I'm the current chair of the WIT Students Bioethics Society. Thank you so much to the Surgical Society for allowing us to address you at this fantastic event. I think that the panelists were truly inspirational. I've learned a lot. So I'm sure that many of you have unknowingly come across bioethical dilemmas at university, perhaps in your community and on social media. One look and you will see students being excluded for arbitrary reasons, women and children being violated on a daily basis. And I think vulnerable populations sinking deeper and deeper into society's forgotten cracks. And while this bothers you, you may ask yourself, what could I do? And this is where the uncertainty ends. At the Bioethics Society, we provide a platform for students to be voices of activism and advocacy for those in need. Understanding that ethics exists on a spectrum ranging from health to politics, socioeconomics, and beyond. So we often work with vulnerable groups and populations so that we can contribute to areas that are overlooked. From our GBV awareness campaigns, LGBTQIA cafes, fundraisers, and childhood development outreach, we know that you don't have to be a medical professional or a trained ethicist in order to care about humanity. I think everyday ethicists are those who care enough to make better choices for themselves and for those around them, instead of following through with a problematic course of action. And here at the Bioethics Society, we will help you effect this change by putting you in touch with professionals and enabling you to effectively mitigate these bioethical dilemmas. On a personal note relating to this panel discussion, being part of a society really helped me break away from the monotony and stress of, I think, WITS and medical school in general. I've met so many wonderful individuals, and together we've become allies to important issues and communities. I truly feel more competent as a future healthcare professional, as well as more conscious in general. So going back to how this started, if you would like to make a difference in this vital sphere, please remember that applications to join the Bioethics Society are still open. All you have to do is fill in a simple application form and give us 2 references from people who know you well. If you think that there's somebody else that would fit well with the society or would be interested, please feel free to share this information with them. You'll find all our details up on the screen, and you can check out our social media for more information. Also, feel free to contact us should you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel. It makes me so proud to hear about the Bioethics Society. I just get so happy to hear about 2 things, Surgical Society and Bioethics Society. So I'll now hand you over to Mohammed to do the vote of thanks in the conclusion. And I just want to thank everyone again for their effort, for attending, as well as our panelists for their expert advice. So I'll now hand you over to Mohammed.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, I just want to veto both Grant and Kimon's serious suggestions. I think go with Game of Thrones, but just don't forget to put your brightness up during the Battle of Winterfell. But yeah, apart from that, on behalf of the Vet Surgical Society's Burnout and Resilience panel team, I would just like to take a moment to thank everyone who has committed themselves to making this event such a success, albeit in a COVID-affected setting once again. Firstly, a huge thanks goes out to our sponsor, Medtronic, who we are indebted to, as well as Professor Martin Smith, the Department of Surgery, and the School of Clinical Medicine. Importantly, I would like to thank the President and Vice President of our society, Amy van Rutten and Chloe Peterson, along with the heads of events and social media, who are Dominic DeCosta and Nompumelelo Manyana, respectively. Without their leadership and the effort of all the members of our team, an event like this would surely not be able to take place. Lastly, thank you to tonight's panelists, Kimon, Dr. Bedat, Dr. Tefo, Dr. Marar, Dr. Lautenberg, and Professor Schmoldruber. It has been a pleasure listening to and engaging with you. You have provided insight and highlighted interesting and key points regarding a phenomenon which all too often seems to plague the students of the health sciences faculty. In the interim, stay safe, and we hope to see you all soon.